Have you ever wondered why one gardener harvests bucket after bucket of large, healthy potatoes while another ends up digging through the soil only to find a handful of tiny tubers? The surprising truth is that the difference usually isn't expensive fertilizer, special varieties, or years of experience. More often than not, it's avoiding a few common mistakes that quietly reduce your harvest long before digging day arrives. Potatoes are among the easiest vegetables to grow, but they're also surprisingly unforgiving when their basic needs are ignored. A mistake made during planting can affect the crop months later, even if everything else seems perfect. Fortunately, every one of these mistakes is easy to prevent once you know what to look for. Today we'll explore the biggest potato growing mistakes gardeners make and, more importantly, the proven methods that consistently lead to healthier plants, larger tubers, and a much more rewarding harvest. Let's start with one of the earliest and most costly errors. Many people become excited when spring arrives and rush to plant potatoes as soon as the ground begins to thaw. While this enthusiasm is understandable, planting too early often causes more problems than benefits. Potatoes prefer cool weather, but they dislike cold, soggy soil. If the soil temperature remains below about 45 degrees Fahrenheit, seed potatoes may sit in wet ground for weeks before sprouting. During this time they become vulnerable to rot, fungal diseases, and poor emergence. Instead of relying on the calendar alone, check the soil itself. A simple soil thermometer can make an enormous difference. Waiting until the soil consistently reaches around 50 degrees Fahrenheit allows sprouts to emerge quickly and establish strong root systems. Just one extra week of patience in spring can often save an entire crop. Another surprisingly common mistake begins before the potatoes ever touch the soil. Many gardeners purchase seed potatoes and plant them immediately after bringing them home. Although this sometimes works, allowing seed potatoes to sprout before planting often produces faster growth. This process, known as chitting, simply means placing seed potatoes in a bright, cool location for several weeks until short, sturdy sprouts develop. These sprouts should be compact rather than long and pale. Healthy sprouts give potatoes a head start once planted, especially in regions with shorter growing seasons. It's a small step that requires almost no effort but can noticeably improve early growth. Now let's talk about something many beginners overlook completely. Not all potatoes should be planted. If a seed potato feels soft, smells unpleasant, shows signs of mold, or has dark, sunken areas, planting it risks introducing disease into your garden. Healthy seed potatoes should feel firm, clean, and free of serious damage. Certified disease-free seed potatoes may cost slightly more than grocery store potatoes, but they dramatically reduce the chances of viruses, bacterial infections, and fungal diseases affecting your crop. That small investment often pays for itself many times over at harvest. Another mistake happens when gardeners try to squeeze as many plants as possible into a small area. It seems logical that more plants should produce more potatoes. Unfortunately, the opposite often happens. When potatoes are planted too closely together, every plant competes for sunlight, water, nutrients, and space underground. Instead of producing several large potatoes, crowded plants frequently develop many undersized tubers. Good spacing allows each plant to build a stronger root system and gives developing potatoes enough room to expand. Rows should also be spaced generously to improve airflow, making it harder for diseases such as early blight and late blight to spread from one plant to another. Air circulation is one of the simplest yet most effective forms of disease prevention. Speaking of soil, here's another mistake that quietly limits production. Many gardeners never improve their soil before planting. Potatoes thrive in loose, well-drained soil that allows tubers to grow freely. Heavy clay soil restricts expansion, resulting in oddly shaped potatoes and poor yields. Adding compost before planting improves soil structure, increases organic matter, enhances drainage, and encourages healthy microbial activity. Loose soil also makes harvesting much easier since potatoes are less likely to become damaged while digging. Fresh manure, however, should generally be avoided immediately before planting potatoes. Although it seems like a rich fertilizer, fresh manure often contains excessive nitrogen. Too much nitrogen encourages lush green leaves but fewer potatoes underground. In addition, fresh manure may increase the risk of diseases and produce rough or misshapen tubers. Well-aged compost is usually the safer and more productive choice. Another mistake involves planting depth. Some gardeners bury seed potatoes only an inch or two below the surface. Others place them extremely deep, believing deeper planting produces larger crops. Neither approach is ideal. Planting too shallow exposes developing potatoes to sunlight as the soil settles or washes away. Sunlight causes potatoes to turn green by producing chlorophyll along with increased levels of solanin, a naturally occurring compound that makes green potatoes unsuitable for eating. On the other hand, planting excessively deep delays emergence and forces young shoots to use valuable stored energy simply reaching the surface. A moderate planting depth provides the best balance between protection and vigorous growth. Watering mistakes are another major reason harvests disappoint. Some gardeners water every day regardless of weather. Others almost forget about watering until plants begin to wilt. Neither extreme supports healthy potato development. Potatoes prefer consistently moist soil rather than constantly wet or repeatedly dry conditions. During early growth, moderate watering encourages strong roots. As tubers begin forming beneath the soil, steady moisture becomes even more important. Large swings between drought and heavy watering often lead to cracked potatoes, irregular growth, or hollow centers. A deep watering once or twice each week, adjusted for rainfall and soil type, usually provides much better results than frequent shallow watering. Mulching can help tremendously here. A layer of straw or other organic mulch helps retain soil moisture, reduces evaporation during hot weather, suppresses weeds, and keeps soil temperatures more stable. This means less watering and healthier plants throughout the growing season. Many gardeners skip mulch because it seems optional. In reality, it can significantly improve growing conditions with very little effort. Perhaps the most famous potato growing practice is hilling. Yet this is also where many gardeners make costly mistakes. Some never hill their potatoes at all. Others hill only once and assume the job is finished. As potato stems grow taller, gradually pulling loose soil around the base of the plants protects developing tubers from sunlight while encouraging additional underground stem growth where more potatoes can develop. Repeated hilling throughout the early growing season often produces larger harvests than doing it only once. It also helps support plants during windy weather and reduces the number of exposed potatoes that later turn green. However, hilling should be done carefully. Avoid damaging stems or disturbing shallow roots while moving soil around the plants. Gentle, gradual hilling is far more effective than piling large amounts of soil against the stems all at once. Another overlooked mistake involves weeds. Many gardeners assume potatoes grow vigorously enough to outcompete unwanted plants. Unfortunately, weeds steal exactly what potatoes need most: sunlight, nutrients, water, and airflow. Even moderate weed pressure during the first half of the growing season can noticeably reduce yields. Keeping beds clean early allows potato plants to establish themselves before their foliage eventually shades much of the surrounding soil. The good news is that preventing weeds is usually much easier than fighting them later. Regular light cultivation, combined with mulch, keeps most weed problems under control without excessive effort. As the plants continue growing, another critical stage approaches, one that determines whether you'll harvest a few small potatoes or baskets full of large, healthy tubers. And surprisingly, this is where even experienced gardeners sometimes make mistakes without realizing it. As the plants become taller and their leaves form a dense green canopy, many gardeners assume the hard work is finished. But in reality, this stage is where several hidden mistakes can quietly reduce the final harvest. One of the biggest is feeding potatoes the wrong fertilizer. It's easy to think that more fertilizer automatically means bigger plants and bigger potatoes. But potatoes don't work that way. Excess nitrogen encourages vigorous leafy growth above the ground while limiting tuber production below it. Your plants may look lush, healthy, and dark green, yet when harvest time arrives, you'll find surprisingly few potatoes. Instead, potatoes benefit from a balanced feeding program that supports root development and tuber formation. Fertilizers containing moderate nitrogen with adequate phosphorus and potassium generally produce better results than high-nitrogen lawn fertilizers. Compost added before planting often provides a strong nutritional foundation, while a light side dressing during the growing season can supply additional nutrients without overstimulating leaf growth. Another mistake is forgetting about crop rotation. Many gardeners grow potatoes in the exact same location year after year because that bed performed well previously. Unfortunately, repeated planting in the same soil allows diseases and pests to build up over time. Organisms that attack potatoes can survive in the soil long after one growing season ends. Each year they become more numerous, making future crops increasingly vulnerable. Rotating potatoes to a different part of the garden every 3 or 4 years greatly reduces this risk. Better yet, avoid planting potatoes where tomatoes, peppers, or eggplants recently grew, since these crops belong to the same family and share many of the same diseases. Planning ahead may not seem exciting, but it's one of the most effective long-term strategies for healthier plants. Let's talk about pests. One mistake many gardeners make is waiting until damage becomes severe before taking action. By the time leaves are full of holes or stems begin weakening, pests may already have caused significant yield loss. Regular inspection makes an enormous difference. Every few days, take a slow walk through the potato patch. Look underneath leaves, inspect stems, and pay attention to any unusual discoloration or feeding damage. Early detection allows small problems to remain small. Hand-picking larger insects, encouraging beneficial predators, and maintaining healthy plant growth often prevents the need for stronger control measures. Healthy plants naturally tolerate minor pest damage much better than stressed ones. Disease monitoring is equally important. Many fungal diseases begin as just a few small spots on lower leaves. Because gardeners are often busy during the growing season, these early warning signs are easy to overlook. Once disease spreads throughout the foliage, treatment becomes much more difficult. Remove heavily infected leaves promptly, avoid wetting foliage unnecessarily during watering, and maintain good airflow between plants. Simple habits like watering near the soil instead of spraying leaves can significantly reduce disease pressure. Another surprisingly common mistake is watering late in the evening. Although the soil certainly receives moisture, leaves often remain damp overnight. Cool nighttime temperatures combined with prolonged moisture create favorable conditions for many fungal diseases. Morning watering is usually the better choice. Plants receive moisture before the heat of the day, while sunlight and airflow help dry any splashed foliage quickly. Timing can matter just as much as the amount of water. Now let's discuss flowers. Many gardeners become concerned when potato plants begin flowering. Some wonder whether flowers should be removed. Others assume flowering means harvest is only days away. In reality, flowers simply indicate that the plants are maturing. For most home gardens, removing flowers provides little measurable benefit. Instead, allow the plants to continue directing energy naturally toward tuber development. Focus your attention on maintaining consistent watering and healthy foliage rather than worrying about blooms. Another mistake is harvesting just to check. Curiosity is understandable. After weeks of watching plants grow, it's tempting to dig beside one plant to see how the potatoes are developing. Unfortunately, repeated digging disturbs roots and developing tubers. Even carefully replacing the soil may interrupt growth or expose potatoes to sunlight. If you want small new potatoes, Gently harvest only from selected plants intended for early use. Leave the remainder undisturbed until they mature fully. Patience usually rewards gardeners with much larger harvests. Weather creates another challenge. During hot summer periods, some gardeners assume potatoes require much more water every single day. While potatoes certainly appreciate moisture during heat, constantly saturated soil can deprive roots of oxygen. Roots need both water and air. Instead of watering by routine, check the soil first. If the top few inches remain moist, additional watering may not yet be necessary. Deep, thorough watering followed by slight drying encourages stronger root systems than constant shallow watering. Mulch becomes especially valuable during heat waves by reducing evaporation and keeping root temperatures more stable. Let's not forget sunlight. Potatoes require generous amounts of direct sunlight to produce maximum yields. Planting them where trees, fences, or buildings create long periods of shade often results in tall, weak plants with fewer potatoes underground. Choose the sunniest location available whenever possible. Even a few additional hours of direct sunlight each day can noticeably improve production. Wind exposure deserves attention as well. Strong winds remove moisture from leaves, stress plants, and sometimes damage stems. If your garden experiences frequent high winds, planting near a windbreak without creating excessive shade can improve overall plant health. One mistake that's often overlooked involves soil compaction. Walking repeatedly between or even through potato rows compresses the soil. Compacted soil limits oxygen movement, restricts root growth, and makes it harder for expanding tubers to develop their full size. Whenever possible, establish permanent walking paths and avoid stepping where potatoes are growing. Loose soil is one of the greatest advantages you can provide your crop. Many gardeners also ignore soil pH. While potatoes tolerate a range of conditions, they generally perform best in slightly acidic soil. Extremely alkaline soil can increase the likelihood of certain diseases while reducing nutrient availability. Testing soil every few years provides valuable information and allows gradual improvements. Instead of guessing, a simple soil test often reveals issues that aren't visible from the surface. Finally, resist the temptation to compare every plant. Some potato varieties naturally produce many medium-sized tubers. Others develop fewer but much larger potatoes. Growth rates also vary depending on weather, soil conditions, and genetics. A healthy crop doesn't always look perfectly uniform. Judge success by the overall harvest rather than by the appearance of individual plants. During the season, as summer gradually gives way to early autumn, one final set of decisions becomes incredibly important. Harvesting too early, harvesting too late, and storing potatoes incorrectly can undo months of careful work. Fortunately, avoiding these final mistakes is easier than most people realize. Now comes the moment every gardener has been waiting for: harvest time. After months of careful planting, watering, hilling, and protecting your crop, it's finally time to uncover what's been growing beneath the soil. But surprisingly, many gardeners lose part of their harvest. Not during the growing season, but in the final weeks before and after digging. Avoiding these last mistakes can make the difference between potatoes that last for months and potatoes that spoil within weeks. One of the biggest mistakes is harvesting too early. When the potato plants begin turning yellow, many people immediately reach for a shovel. However, if you plan to store your potatoes through autumn or winter, patience pays off. As the vines naturally die back, the skins of the potatoes become thicker and tougher. This natural process helps protect the tubers from bruising, disease, and moisture loss. A good way to test maturity is to gently rub the skin of one potato with your thumb. If the skin rubs off easily, the crop needs more time. If the skin stays firmly attached, the potatoes are usually ready for storage. On the other hand, don't leave mature potatoes in the ground for too long, especially if rainy weather is expected. Excess moisture can increase the risk of rot and encourage diseases that shorten storage life. Another common mistake is harvesting carelessly. It's easy to damage potatoes with a shovel or garden fork. Even small cuts and punctures become entry points for bacteria and fungi. Begin digging several inches away from each plant and carefully loosen the soil before lifting the potatoes by hand. Taking a few extra minutes now can save a large portion of your harvest later. After harvesting, many gardeners immediately wash their potatoes. Although clean potatoes look appealing, washing removes the protective layer of dry soil and adds moisture that encourages spoilage. Instead, allow the potatoes to dry naturally for several hours in a shaded, well-ventilated place. Once the soil has dried, gently brush it away. Only wash potatoes right before cooking them. Another valuable step is curing. Freshly harvested potatoes benefit from resting in a cool, dark location with good air circulation for about 1 to 2 weeks. During this period, small scratches heal naturally, and the skins become even stronger. Proper curing greatly improves storage life and reduces losses caused by rot. Storage conditions are just as important. Many people keep potatoes in warm kitchens or bright rooms. Unfortunately, warmth encourages sprouting, while light causes potatoes to turn green. Green potatoes contain increased amounts of solanine, a naturally occurring compound that can be harmful if eaten in large quantities. Store potatoes in a cool, dark, dry place with good ventilation. Avoid sealing them in plastic bags, where moisture quickly builds up. Paper bags, burlap sacks, wooden crates, or ventilated boxes are much better choices. Another mistake is storing damaged potatoes together with healthy ones. A single bruised or rotting potato can quickly affect those around it. Before storing your harvest, sort through every potato carefully. Use any damaged, cut, or unusually small potatoes first, and keep only the healthiest ones. For long-term storage, it's also a good habit to inspect your stored potatoes every few weeks. Remove any that begin to soften, sprout excessively, or show signs of decay before they affect the rest of the crop. Finally, remember that every growing season is different. Some years are cooler, others are hotter. Rainfall varies, soil conditions change, and even experienced gardeners continue learning. Instead of expecting perfection, pay attention to what works in your own garden. Keep simple notes about planting dates, varieties, watering schedules, and harvest results. Over time, these observations become one of the most valuable gardening tools you can have. The best potato harvest doesn't come from luck. It comes from avoiding small mistakes, caring for the plants consistently, and making thoughtful decisions throughout the season. Follow these proven practices, and you'll give your potatoes the best possible chance to produce healthier plants, larger tubers, and a harvest you'll be proud of. If you found these tips helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your own potato growing experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear which methods have worked best in your garden. Happy gardening, and may your next potato harvest be your biggest one yet.